Hello, welcome everyone. I am about to be doing a live with Shelby Carpenter, who is the founder of Cloud9 Conception, and we're going to be discussing egg donation. So they support people who are looking for an egg donor, as well as those who want to donate their eggs. So welcome everyone. If you're looking into third-party reproduction, this is definitely a live that you want to listen into. Be great to know where you're joining from, where you're at in your journey, and I'm going to see if Shelby is here right now so we can start chatting. Welcome everyone, nice to see you today. Hi Shelby.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
Hi guys.
Nice to see you. Welcome to everyone who's joining.
Hello.
So I've just given you and Cloud9 Conception a brief introduction,
Sure.
But if you could tell us more, that would be great before we talk about donating your eggs.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cloud9 Conception is a newer agency. We were founded this year. I am the founder. I'm Shelby. Yep. I'm a two-time prior egg donor. And I previously worked at the State-of-the-Art Fertility Institute in Ohio, as well as having ran a third-party program there. I also worked with a separate company that provides concierge services. So I've been in the field for a while. I love it. It's very close to my heart, and I'm excited to answer some questions for you guys today.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So you have been an egg donor twice yourself.
Yes.
Can you start by telling us a bit about that?
Oh my gosh, of course. So I first began getting curious about egg donation when I was
Can people still hear me? I think we have lost Shelby. Let me see if I can invite her back in. Hello, we lost you. You're back.
Should we get disconnected?
All good. Please continue.
Okay, of course. So I began getting curious about egg donation when I was in college. I was pursuing my degree in psychology. I worked at a coffee bar, and I thought gestational carrier sounded pretty cool, but it seemed a bit steep for the age range I was in. And I didn't know much about it, and there weren't a lot of resources in my area to learn about it. So I kind of put it on the back burner. I started an application and never completed it. And then once I graduated college and started working at a fertility center, I got the hang of the ins and outs. A lot of my questions got answered, and I pretty much immediately knew I wanted to make that type of impact on someone's life. So I pursued my first cycle with an agency. I think that egg donation straight through a clinic program is great, but working with an agency gives you kind of like a pal to go through the process with.
Definitely.
So agencies are really, really great resources and advocates for donors. And my first cycle was great. I will say I had some side effects, and I do remember being like, oh, I wasn't expecting this, but it gave me such a sense of purpose that I actually went and decided to do it again.
So may I ask how old you were when you did both cycles?
My first cycle, I was 25, and my second, I was 27. Okay. And I don't currently have any children. I don't, that's still kind of up in the air. I don't know if I want kids, but I knew that since it wouldn't affect my fertility health in the future, why not give this incredible gift to someone?
Do you know much about the recipients?
I know a little bit about them. So the agency did provide me some information, and they also updated me when the births happened. So that was really, really cool and very appreciative of that. So yeah, other than that though, it was pretty much non-disclosed. So don't know their names. I know they're in the Ohio area, but really nothing beyond that.
Do you know how many children have been born from your eggs?
I believe 3 total. Okay. And the second intended parent that I donated to, I believe they're about to start trying for their next transfer.
Wow, what an amazing gift to give people. And that's why we love what you do at Cloud9, because you're helping intended parents, and you're also supporting people who want to give that gift and look at becoming an egg donor. So I'd love to ask you some more about it today. Yeah. And if anyone watching has any questions, please feel free to ask Shelby, as she has a wealth of experience.
Of course, yeah, I'm excited. Let's get to it.
Okay, so what's a typical timeline for egg donation, and does it impact someone's life if they are donating eggs?
Sure. So the timeline of egg donation can vary. The longest portion, I would say, of egg donation is typically waiting to get selected. So oftentimes your profile will become live and you're waiting for someone to come across you and say, hey, I'd like to move forward with her. But once that process starts, usually between 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
There are multiple steps when it comes to egg donation. You have to get clinical or medical clearance. You have to get a psychological evaluation performed. And then in most states, you have to do a legal contract. So all 3 of these things have to be taken care of before you can even do a cycle. The cycle itself, about 10 to 14 days of injections, and you administer these at home. And then you go right into the retrieval procedure. So you would have a support person with you. Usually you're under light anesthesia. You do that procedure, they retrieve the eggs, and then those are used for donation. Recovery can vary, but usually you'll start a period within about 2 weeks of that retrieval procedure.
Did you have much bloating or cramping?
I had a lot of cramping, didn't have much bleeding, and everyone's affected a little bit differently. I have had donors that went back to work the next day on their feet and were fine. I've had donors that took a few days off work. So it really does vary and everyone responds a little bit differently. But because donors are expected to have a better response to the medication, I typically will advise donors to plan for at least a few days of recovery after the procedure.
Yeah. And for intended parents that you're working with, have they selected a donor at that point, or is it after the eggs have been collected?
So with Cloud9 Conception, we're what's called a fresh egg donor agency. So you select someone, they go through the process for you, and all of the eggs that are retrieved are used for that intended parent. There are other agencies, most often egg banks, where the donor has already gone through that process, and now they're getting frozen bundles of eggs, usually in cohorts of about 6. They thaw those out in a lab and they use them for treatment. Most often, I find that reproductive endocrinologists will recommend frozen egg if you only want to expand your family by 1 child. So if you're looking for multiple children, fresh is typically the way to go.
And why is it? Why is fresh preferred for that?
Because you get more eggs. So usually with a fresh egg donation, donors can expect to get somewhere between 10 to 20 oocytes to use. Wow. With frozen, you're getting typically, again, bundles of 6. If you want to get more than that, you might end up paying as much as you would for a fresh donor.
So I guess if you're hoping to get between 10 to 20 eggs, you'd be hoping to get, I don't know, what, 85 to 90% of embryos from that?
There's a little bit of an attrition rate, of course, that takes place. Once the eggs are fertilized, not all of those eggs will make it to, day 3, day 5. Yeah, not all day 5s are blastocyst stage, which is kind of like the golden egg of embryos. It really varies, but typically people will pursue a fresh egg donor cycle with the hopes of getting a handful of embryos to use.
Interestingly, so I'm pregnant from a recent cycle of IVF. And, thank you, we're twins. And the embryos were very slow developing. And so I had a fresh transfer on day 5, but they were not blastocysts.
Oh, wow. And that happens sometimes. So I have seen where there's kind of a stretch and the embryos fully develop around day 7, but there's mixed responses for doctors. Some doctors will say, let's transfer it, and hopefully the uterine environment gives, better chances of it to continue to produce. And then other doctors will hold off. But that's so awesome that did you say with twins?
Sorry?
Did you say with twins? Oh my gosh. Was it 1 embryo transfer or 2?
2.
Okay, good job. Look at your body working miracles.
So it's just fascinating, isn't it? How science can it's so unpredictable what's going to happen. And I was going to ask, in terms of being an egg donor or, being the recipient of donated eggs, do you, as an agency, do you have like a sort of protocol that you suggest people who are donating their eggs follow in terms of diet, nutrition, lifestyle, supplements?
We will leave all of that to the physician. So the agency won't give any medical advice. We can help walk you through the process, tell you what our experiences have been, but the doctor will really lay everything out. What I've seen in the field, what most physicians will recommend is doing just well balanced, not high sugar, keeping hydrated, and then making sure that a lot of like the artificial proteins and stuff that people take for fitness, they'll tell you to back off of that for a little while.
And do you work with most clinics in the US?
Yeah, we try to work with any clinic that any intended parent comes to us from. So we typically see a lot of people from the Midwest because we're in Ohio, but we do have, you know, clients that have come to us from the coastal areas. And then we also have a couple of identified clinics that will ship eggs outside of the US. So if we have an international intended parent, we can look at treatment options with that as well.
Okay, great. And what about for people who are looking to become an egg donor? Where should they be located?
Yes.
Or does it not matter?
Yeah, our website, on the homepage, if you scroll down, it'll say, like, I want to become an egg donor. You'll click on that. The pre-screening process can be pretty intense. I like to warn women it can take a little bit of time to fill out the application. But the first step is just a 5-minute pre-screen. So going online, filling out some basic information. Typically, they're looking for BMI, non-smoking status, age range usually in your 20s. However, if you have a healthy egg donor cycle on your, like in your medical history, they might go ahead and consider you if you're a little bit above 30. But we're really just looking for an all-around healthy lifestyle and no severe genetic or chromosomal abnormalities running consistently through the family tree.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, great. And what about the responsibilities for someone who is looking to become an egg donor? Because I know that people might be concerned about applying because they might think I might be legally, you know, responsible for a child that's born. Financially, what if they come and find me one day? Tell us more.
Yeah, of course. So in the United States, most of the fertility laws are state by state. So some states have something called at-will egg donation, which means that you can go and donate your eggs at a clinic and there's no legal contract required. I always tell donors, choose the agencies that require it no matter what. Even if you're in a state that's at will, make sure you're choosing an agency or a request from your agency that a legal contract get completed. That contract is typically between an attorney that represents you and then also a separate one that represents the intended parent. So you want to make sure it's separate parties that are representing each person. The contract will outline the rights to the eggs once they're retrieved. For example, a donor might say, hey, I'm donating these eggs to you, but no one else can use them. So if you finish your family building and you want to get rid of some extra eggs, discard them. I don't want them passed forward. Or a donor might say, I don't want them, oh gosh, there's so many different things that an egg donor can put in. But the legal contract essentially says, I'm giving you rights to the eggs under these circumstances, and this is my compensation package. And I don't have parental rights to the children that are born from this cycle. And that is one of the biggest recommendations I can give to egg donors is just make sure that that is on board.
Such good advice.
Yeah.
For anyone who's interested in potentially becoming an egg donor or looking into being a recipient of egg donation, please head to our link in bio now and find out more about Cloud9 Conception, because it is amazing how you support people in, you know, whatever your unique journey, whatever you're looking for. Would there ever be a situation where a recipient and a donor would meet?
There are cycles called known donation cycles, and then there are also cycles called disclosed donation cycles. And sometimes people intermix those words, but I don't view them as the same thing. So a known egg donor is, I want my sister to be my egg donor. I want my friend to be my egg donor. And in that case, you have a known relationship with each other. You typically will go to counseling appointments together to discuss what that looks like with family building, et cetera, et cetera. Or you might have what's called a disclosed donation, which is we know each other's identifying information. We're going to send each other letters. I'm going to send picture updates of the kids, you know, yada, yada. We will do coordination for both of those situations. So if someone comes to us and is like, I don't even know where to start, but I know I need an egg donor and my sister has offered, we will assist with that as well. The process is very similar, but usually a couple of added things, mostly with counseling, just to make sure everyone's on the same page with the same expectations.
I do have to say that what you've done is like the most amazing gift you could give anyone, because I have sperm donor conceived children. And, you know, this would not have been possible without that person having given us their sperm.
Right.
And so I do think it's absolutely life-changing. So anyone who's interested in finding out more about being a recipient, being an egg donor, please do reach out to the team, who are so happy to help you. The link is in the bio. Or even just to find out more about the process, how it happens, why people use egg donors. please do to tap our link in bio. You sort of just covered this, but can someone choose who they donate to?
So yes, there are certain factors that you can select when you're applying. So for example, I've actually had quite a few women who have applied that only want to donate to same-sex couples. That's something that's their bread and butter. They want to help that community out. You can specify that. If you want to donate to a single woman who's trying to pursue single motherhood because your mom did that with you and you thought it was so powerful and incredible, you can do that as well. But past that, there's usually not a lot of, this person works at, yada, yada. Are you okay with that? It's not that in-depth typically, unless you're doing an egg donor cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes complete sense. How many times can someone donate eggs?
Yeah, so ASRM, which is kind of like the governing body of reproductive medicine, which you just went to ASRM conference, so you're like, I'm aware, they cap women at 6 donations.
Okay.
Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. And one of the big ones is just to make sure that there's not a ton of genetically related children running around in the same area. So they will look at a couple of things, like the location of which you're donating. Maybe you've donated 6 times. You might get approved for a 7th cycle if you're donating out of the country or if you're donating across the country. So there are some situations that they might be lenient with in regards to the physicians overseeing care, but usually you want to do about 6 and cap it, and that's across clinics. So don't do 6 at one clinic and then 6 at another.
Okay, that's really good to know. And risks or side effects, we briefly talked about it, but I guess it's kind of similar, isn't it, to the process of IVF for the first half of it?
Yes, absolutely. So anytime that there is a puncture in skin or tissue, there's of course the risk of infection or trauma. That's incredibly, incredibly low with the retrieval procedure, which is how they get eggs from the ovaries. So very, very low on that end. With egg donation, you typically will experience what's similar to the PMS. So cramping, bloating, mild water weight gain, moodiness, those are all very, very common. What we look out for when someone's going through egg donation is the more severe side effects. So chest pains, difficulty urinating. If they have weight gain that's more than 7 to 10 pounds on a scale, that means they're holding on to too much water. So the more severe risk of egg donation is called ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, and it's sometimes shortened to OHSS. That falls on a spectrum. So you could have mild, which is I'm just a little bit nauseous, I don't want to go to work today. Or you could have severe, which is like I'm in the hospital and things are not looking great right now. So it is important to know that risk. The physician and nursing team should go over all of that information with you before you ever sign the consent form to move forward. But it is really important to read after the post-operative care notes and make sure that you're keeping in touch with the clinical team.
Definitely. In your experience, or the donors that you support, is it common that they would be told how many eggs were retrieved, for example, after they've donated?
Sure. So very few clinics that I'm aware of will withhold that information. When it comes to egg donor and intended parent medical records, it can get a little muddy. So there are some clinics who will say that the number of eggs retrieved are part of the intended parent's medical record, and the donor shouldn't have access to that. I'm a firm believer that egg donors should have access to that procedure, essentially the outcome of that procedure. They should know, did their body produce a healthy amount of eggs? Did those eggs look good? How many of them were able to be used? We typically will cut it off there. So we will advocate for the clinic to provide the basic information. We will not advocate that the clinic tell the donor how many embryos were produced, what the progression looked like. If a donor wants to know about pregnancy outcomes, typically we'll advise them to reach out to us within a couple of years, and because it can take that long to carry a pregnancy and deliver. And once that happens, we can reach out to the intended parents. If they're open to giving information, we will share that with them.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And then donors can choose whether they're anonymous or not.
Yes, typically they can. What I've seen most recently is that many people like the non-disclosure. So it's important to know that non-identified or non-disclosed egg donation does not mean anonymous. So we're not saying that they're never going to figure out who you are. What we're saying is that the agency and the clinic is not going to share identifying information. 23andMe, genealogy, family tree websites. There's no way to avoid that there's the potential of that in the future. I always try really hard to encourage donors, and this is a shout out to the sibling donor registry, but I always tell donors to sign up for the sibling donor registry, or donor sibling registry. It's essentially, you go online, you register, it's free for donors, you just put in your information regarding your egg donor code, and you can update it with medical information. So say 3 years after you donate, 2 people in your family get diagnosed with the same type of cancer. You can go in and update that information so that the intended parents can keep up with anything that's changing in your medical history.
Absolutely. But also for recipients to, if they want to update that registry as well.
Yes.
So people who've used the same donor can see, you know, other children from the same donor.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's a really, really great tool for anyone who's on both sides of it. For, like you said, recipients or egg donors, it's a great way to kind of keep things up to date.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Of course.
Should people consider freezing their eggs before they donate? Because egg donors are normally on the younger side, aren't they?
So I would say this is up to the discretion of your doctor. A lot of times they'll say if you're healthy and you're in your early 20s, it's not necessary to do an egg freeze right now. Once you get to the point, you know, down the road where maybe you're hitting the point of your 30s, I would recommend talking to your doctor. I think it's a really, really good idea to at least have some backup in the cryopreservation tanks. What you don't want to experience is having donated to multiple people, trying to get pregnant, and realizing you can't have your own biological child. So very important once you hit the point where I would say around 29 to 32, if you still haven't had kids and you're still debating, definitely go talk to a physician or a reproductive endocrinologist.
Okay. Do you see much egg sharing happen?
Not with Cloud9 Conception. It can, you know, I do think that egg sharing is a great opportunity. It makes it oftentimes more affordable for families, but it can be kind of up in the air in regards to what the quantity outcome will be. And then if we split those in half and do an egg share program, how many will the donor get, and will it really matter in the long run? If she ends up with 3 eggs, is that really going to help her when she's trying to conceive later?
Great point. Really, really good point. You sort of just answered this, but can someone donate if they've already retrieved for their own fertility journey? So afterwards.
Yeah, as long as as long as the retrieval didn't take place because of a reproductive issue that was being, you know, seen, that's not a problem at all. And in fact, a lot of people prefer that, because then you have a medical history that says, these were what my records looked like, this was the outcome of my retrieval, and it gives more confidence to the intended parents who want to move forward with that donor.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of egg donation or becoming an egg donor, you mentioned it before, and how there are steps to go through and not everyone will meet that criteria.
Right.
And you mentioned BMI and some other things. Does AMH come into it as well?
Oh, yes. So AMH, different agencies do this different. Some agencies will have you do an AMH draw as long as your application looks good. Others, like Cloud9 Conception, is like this right now. We will wait until you're selected to do any of the workup. So we're not going to make you go do a blood draw or anything until someone's interested. The AMH does definitely play a role. Different doctors have different requirements for what the AMH has to be a donor for their program. We typically like to see above a 2.5 on our end, but some doctors will even say a 3.5 or a 4. Because it varies so much, we leave that in the hands of the physician who's overseeing the care.
Is that because that, you know, you're looking to get as many eggs as possible?
I think that's the goal. So I do think that I see the AMH plays into it, but so does the FSH, which is the follicle stimulating hormone. And that essentially tells us how hard is it for you to produce eggs. If we're seeing levels that indicate that you might produce a really good number of eggs, but it's going to be really hard for you to get there, they're going to be doing, you know, the physicians are going to look at that and they're going to say, is it worth the risk for this donor? So there's a couple of different things that come into play, but they're definitely going to be looking at hormone levels to determine if you're a good fit for egg donation.
That's really good to know. Someone has just asked, do you have a way to verify illnesses that run through a family for a donor? You mentioned that before, so medical history.
Sure. So the applications for egg donors are self-report. So they will go through and they will fill out everything about their family history on their own. I will say donors are often pretty honest about that. However, there's no way for us to confirm that. Like, we can't go call their parents and their cousins and ask them what their conditions are. But egg donors will go through a pretty lengthy genetic screen. So it used to be the genetic screening for donors used to be about 3 conditions. It has grown to over 500.
Wow.
So we have a really, really in-depth way of seeing whether they're carriers of certain conditions, whether they're affected by certain conditions. And just because a donor is a carrier doesn't mean that she won't be eligible. We have to look at that, see if it's very risky, and then test the sperm source to make sure there's not an overlap.
Really, really useful. I hope that's answered your question. If anyone else has any questions for Shelby, please don't hesitate to get in touch. The link is in our bio. Obviously, you can DM through the Cloud9 Conception Instagram account as well, but all this information is here for you. So, and support, whether you're looking to become an egg donor or looking to use donated eggs, it's definitely worth a chat. What should someone consider if they already have a family and want to donate? Would it come down to age as well? So is there an age cutoff?
Yeah, so the standard age cutoff for egg donors is usually 32, but a lot of clinics will want you below the age of 30. So just kind of think about that. We do have a couple of donors with Cloud9 Conception that have families, and they're 27, 28. It can look good to doctors. I know a while ago, a lot of doctors required that there was a pregnancy value for that donor, so a prior pregnancy. However, with that being said, I think the main thing to think about is that you are going to, in a sense, you will have siblings for your biologically related children. So if you're donating across states or in state, just kind of keep that in mind. Again, I think that counseling is a really good thing for this, making sure you're comfortable with that. Now, I swear, like 23andMe, they'll send you notifications that your second cousin's on Facebook and do you want to connect? So just kind of being aware that those things will happen and being open with your children that you're taking that journey once they're at the age to understand.
Yeah, really, really good advice. Anything else that you think is worth people knowing whilst we finish?
Yeah, so I do want to say for donors specifically, I think there can be this misconception that egg donation is really just easy money. And I want to promise them it is not. There's a lot of commitment and requirements that you have to adhere to proceed with the process. The procedure, again, everyone has different responses to. My egg donor cycles were incredibly rewarding for me and for the entire parents, so I would never really deter someone from going through or researching the cycle. But I do think that you have to understand that you're making a commitment for the medical care of others. So just making sure that you're in it because you want to help someone and not just because you're foreseeing a paycheck coming. That is one thing I always make sure donors are aware of, that their number one strive and drive for doing this should be to help someone in need.
Do the egg donors that you see or work with, do they have...
I'm so sorry, one more time.
In terms of what they're looking to achieve and the reasons they're doing it for, etc.
Yeah, so we do, and I'm sorry, I cut out a little bit, so I hope I'm getting your question correctly, but we do orientations with our donors. So not a lot of agencies will do what's called an orientation, which is when you meet with the donor, you discuss the process before their profile ever goes live. We do that at Cloud9 Conception because what we don't want to happen is for someone to say, yep, I'm on board, I'm seeing money signs, and then they get matched and they're like, whoa, I'm going to have to fly across state, or I'm going to have to do injections. I'm scared of needles. So we always talk to the donors before they ever go live on our site. And that really helps us weed out those who are in it for the right reasons, and whether or not we think they're at a state of maturity to proceed with that process. And then, of course, the counseling session that they have to go through, which will typically include a personality assessment, that gives us indicators of whether or not they're in a stable position to move forward as well.
That's really good to know. Really good to know. I hope that's answered people's questions. Well, Shelby, thank you so much for all of this information. It's been so useful. Someone has just said, amazing gift. They're a mum because of egg donation. So really,
yes.
Yeah, and as I said, anyone who is interested in any kind of egg donation, please do head to our link in bio to chat to Shelby and connect with the Cloud9 Conception team for, trustworthy, reliable advice.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
All right.
And congrats again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice to see you. Have a good day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.